Zola and Becky stood silently at the edge of the grand foyer inside the Bakari estate, her eyes fixed on three little boys who were tearing apart the once pristine living room. Bright red paint smeared across the cream-colored walls. A glass table. Lace shattered. Pillows exploded like feathers in a blizzard. But it wasn't the chaos that stunned Zola, it was the storm of sorrow behind their eyes. "You're not gonna trick us like the others," shouted the tallest of the trio, Malachi, hurling a toy drum at her feet. "We don't want you here, we want our mama back." His brothers, Omari and Jelani, stood behind him like loyal warriors, their tear-streaked faces smudged with dust. They had chased off 17 nannies in half a year, and they clearly planned to make Zola number 18. But Zola didn't see wild children. She saw 3 broken hearts and small bodies, boys fighting to keep from drowning in sadness too big for their age. "I know you miss your mama," she said softly, stepping carefully over blocks and broken picture frames. "And I'm not here to replace her. I came because I know what it feels like when your world turns upside down." The boys froze. Their tiny shoulders stiffened. No adult had spoken to them like that. "You don't know us," Malachi snapped, his eyes sharp with distrust. Zola bent down so their eyes met. "You're right, I don't know everything about you. But I do know grief. I know what fear feels like. I know how easy it is to act mean, so nobody gets close enough to hurt you." The brothers exchanged looks, confused by her calm words. "But let me tell you something," she added gently. "I'm not running. And before this day ends, I'm going to show you something that might just change your mind." Malachi narrowed his eyes. "What thing?" Zola stood tall and brushed the feathers off her tunic. "I'm going to show you that letting someone care for you, even when your heart is cracked, doesn't mean forgetting the one you lost." At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. All 3 boys stiffened, panic flashing in their eyes. "He's coming," Omari whispered. "Baba's gonna be so mad." But what happened next would surprise everyone, including the man who'd long since given up hope. 6 months earlier, Ezra Bakari sat in his sky-high office on the 45th floor of Bakari Holdings, watching his phone buzz for the 3rd time that morning. He already knew what it was. Either another nanny disaster or another call from the school. He was right, it was both. "Mr. Bakari," said his assistant Imani as he picked up. "I've got bad news and worse news." Ezra sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Bad news first. The boys caused a food riot at lunch, locked a teacher in a closet, and refused to leave the playground." He groaned. "And the worse? Nanny number 17 quit. She left a note. Those kids aren't kids. Their spirit's gone rogue. No paycheck is worth this." Ezra leaned back in his chair, his chest tight. Only 6 months ago, he'd had a loving wife and 3 joyful sons. Now Ayana was gone, taken in a tragic crash that left his family in ruins. He was trying to be both mother and father, but his sons were slipping further from him every day. "Call the agency," he said. "I already did," Imani replied. "They're out of candidates. No one wants to work with the Bakari boys anymore." Ezra looked out over the Atlanta skyline, the city he'd built his fortune in. He was worth billions, but that couldn't fix the one thing truly broken: his sons. He was only 35, self-made, brilliant, a man who'd built everything from scratch. But when grief took over, even his 3 little boys became strangers. Ezra had no idea how to reach them. And he wasn't immune either. Ayana had been his rock, his compass. Without her, life was hollow. He stayed late at work because coming home felt like facing a ghost. Worst of all, he knew the boys blamed him, even if they never said it. Ayana had been on the road buying a surprise gift for Ezra's birthday when her car was hit. He hadn't stopped feeling responsible since. "Imani," he said, snapping out of it. "Post a job listing. Offer double the rate. Someone out there has to be willing." But Ezra had no clue that the woman who would answer that post wasn't just willing, she was destined. In a modest apartment across town, 30-year-old Zola Mbeki scrolled through job ads, her laptop balanced on her knees, while rain tapped the window beside her. She'd been unemployed for 2 months since the family she worked for relocated overseas. Zola had spent 8 years as a nanny. She adored children, but the job market was brutal. Everyone seemed to want younger candidates with degrees and glowing references. What no resume ever captured was Zola's rare ability. She could see through pain. She had lived it. Her parents died in a house fire when she was 7. Zola was shuffled from home to home, always the stranger, never the daughter. By the time she aged out of foster care at 18, she'd learned how to read emotional wounds before they bled out in behavior. She had a quiet gift. The worse a child acted, the deeper she looked, and usually she found sadness hiding behind the rage. When she saw Ezra Bakari's job post, she nearly skipped it. Seeking experienced caregiver for 3 active boys. Previous nannies found the position ... challenging. Excellent pay for the right person. Challenging, Zola snorted. That was rich folk code for, our kids are wild and we're desperate. But curiosity tugged at her. She looked up the Bakari name. And then she saw it, the story that stopped her heart. 6 months ago, Ayana Bakari had died in a car crash, leaving behind a husband and triplet sons. Zola's throat tightened. She knew exactly what those boys were feeling, the fear, the fury, the need to push everyone away before they left first. They don't need a nanny, she whispered. They need someone who's walked through fire and came out loving. That night, Zola didn't just send a resume, she wrote a letter from the heart. Not polished, not perfect, but honest. The next morning, Ezra sat in his study, steeling himself for interviews. The boys were at school, but he knew the quiet wouldn't last. Imani had scheduled 5 meetings. Ezra wasn't hopeful. Candidate after candidate walked in, one overly strict, one bubbly and clueless, 2 more who either judged his kids or underestimated them. Then came Zola. She was calm, composed, and wore a simple maroon dress. No wide eyes at the lavish hallway. She didn't ask about salaries. Her gaze lingered only on the framed photos of Ayana and the boys. Mr. Bakari, she said, offering a firm handshake. Thank you for seeing me. In his office, Ezra studied her. Tell me about yourself, Ms. Meki. She nodded. I don't have a fancy degree, but I've got years of experience and a childhood that taught me everything school never could. Ezra tilted his head. What do you mean? My parents died when I was a kid. Foster care became my world. I learned what it's like to be scared of getting close to people. What it's like to act out so no one sticks around long enough to leave. Her voice didn't waver. I read about your family, Mr. Bakari, and I don't think your sons are bad. I think they're grieving. And grief wears many masks: anger, defiance, even destruction. Ezra felt a flicker inside him. Was it ... hope? 17 nannies gave up, he warned. I've cared for children who tried to burn down their foster homes just to get attention, Zola replied gently. Anger is just pain with nowhere to go. I don't fear it. I understand it. Ezra stared at her, something shifting inside his chest. For the first time, someone didn't see his sons as broken, but as hurting. When can you start? He asked quietly. The next morning, just as the sun stretched across the red clay horizon, Zola arrived at the Bakari home with a thermos of strong Kenyan coffee and a cloth bag of warm homemade coconut biscuits. She knew that first impressions mattered, especially with children who had built walls to protect their hearts. Ezra met her at the door, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. The boys are still asleep, but not for long, he warned, sounding like a soldier bracing for war. Zola handed him the thermos with a kind smile. You'll need this. And Mr. Bakari, whatever happens today, I'm not giving up on them. That simple gesture shook Ezra more than he expected. When had anyone last brought him comfort? Thank you, Zola. At precisely 7:30, a thunderstorm of little feet erupted upstairs, followed by a crash and a chorus of yelling. They're up, Ezra said with a wince. Zola followed the noise into the kitchen and paused in the doorway, her face calm as she took in the scene. 3 identical boys with wild curls and chocolate skin were entrenched in what could only be described as a breakfast battlefield. The table was covered in syrup, spoons flew like missiles, and one boy was about to pour an entire jug of hibiscus juice on his brother's head. Food fight, screamed Jelani. But instead of scolding them, Zola laughed. Oh wow, she said as she calmly stepped over a banana peel. You boys sure know how to throw a party. This is impressive. The trio stopped, puzzled by her reaction. Aren't you mad? Asked Omari, blinking. Why would I be? Zola replied. I mean, you must all be sticky messes by now. I hope you brought extra clothes. She sat at the kitchen table, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and opened her bag. I brought biscuits, but you're probably too full of syrup to want any. We didn't eat it, Malachi said defensively. We threw it. Ah, Zola nodded. So you're warriors of breakfast. Got it. What are your names, brave ones? I'm Malachi, the oldest said, folding his arms. That's Omari, that's Jelani. And we don't like nannies. Perfect, Zola beamed. Because I'm not really a nanny. Then what are you? Omari asked, his curiosity outweighing his suspicion. I'm a friend who knows how to bake, tell stories, and build blanket forts. I come in peace. Jelani's eyes lit up. What kind of stories? All kinds, Zola whispered. Tales of kings who ride lions, rivers that talk, and children who find their way home through music. The boys were intrigued, but Malachi stood firm. We don't want friends. Friends leave. Zola's heart ached. You're right, she said softly. Sometimes people leave even when they love us. It hurts so much it feels like your chest might crack. The kitchen went still. Our mama left, whispered Jelani, his voice small and breaking. I know, Zola said, brushing a hand over his shoulder. And I bet it still stings every day. Tears welled up in their eyes. Can I tell you a secret? The boys nodded. I lost my mama and baba when I was not much older than you. And I got so scared, I pushed everyone away. I thought if I acted tough, no one would leave because they'd already be gone. Did it work? Malachi asked. For a while, Zola admitted, but then I realized I was just lonely. I missed out on love because I was too afraid to let anyone stay. She pulled out the biscuits. These are coconut chip. My mama used to make them. I bake them when I miss her. She set the bag on the table. You don't have to eat them. You don't have to like me. But I'll be here on good days, bad days, and sticky kitchen days. Because when someone cares about you, they stay. Silence. Then Jelani stepped forward. Can I have one? Of course, Zola said warmly. He took a bite and his eyes widened. This is really good. Omari and Malachi slowly joined him. As the boys munched and began giggling together, Ezra watched from the hallway, stunned. In 20 minutes, Zola had done what 17 others couldn't. She'd cracked open their guarded hearts. But their peaceful moment wouldn't last. Ezra's phone buzzed, and he stepped aside to answer. Ezra, came a voice. Marcus, his attorney. We've got a situation. The local news is running a story tonight. Someone leaked info about the nannies. They're calling your boys emotionally disturbed. They're painting you as a neglectful father. Ezra's stomach dropped. What's the headline? Something like, Billionaire's wild triplets drive away 17 nannies. Are they beyond help? Marcus paused. They even mentioned the new nanny. They might come after her next. Ezra ended the call, heart pounding. If the media dragged Zola's name into this, she could walk out just like the others. and the boys would be shattered. But when he returned to the kitchen, he saw something that stopped him cold. Zola sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the boys, building a castle from blocks. "Look, Baba," Jelani cried. "We're making a palace for Mama. Zola says she can see it from heaven." Ezra's eyes stung. It was the first time his sons had spoken about Ayana with hope instead of rage. "It's beautiful," he said, voice thick. Then Malachi looked up at him, brows furrowed. "Is she gonna leave too?" Zola met Ezra's eyes. He knew he had to tell her. "Boys," she said gently, "keep building for your mama. I need a quick chat with your dad." In the living room, Ezra explained the news story. "They'll target you. I won't blame you if you walk." Zola was quiet, then asked, "Do you think your boys are monsters?" "Of course not," he said. "They're grieving." "Then why care what strangers say?" she asked. Ezra struggled to answer. "It might ruin their future." "Or," Zola said, "you'll show them that love doesn't back down when things get hard. Mr. Bakari, I've been judged all my life for being a foster kid, for not having a degree. But a few people believed in me anyway. And that changed everything. Your sons deserve the same." Ezra looked at her in awe. "So, you're staying?" "I'm staying," she said, "on one condition. When the story airs, we watch it together, as a family." Ezra nodded. And as the day continued, something shifted in the house. When Omari melted down over a missing toy, Zola didn't shush him or distract him. She sat beside him, rubbing his back, and whispered, "It's okay to cry." That afternoon, while Omari clung to her in tears and Jelani shrieked when a loud garbage truck rolled past, Zola simply picked them up and held them close, singing an old lullaby her foster mother once hummed to her on stormy nights. And when Malachi deliberately splashed red paint on her dress during art time, Zola just laughed. "Looks like we're both artists now," she said. "Wanna paint something beautiful together?" By the time the sun dipped low behind the trees, the boys were trailing her like ducklings, helping prepare rice and okra stew, setting the table with unmatched dishes, and picking up toys without being told. Ezra watched, stunned, as his sons transformed before his eyes. The hurt hadn't disappeared, but the fire behind their anger had dimmed. At dinner, Malachi asked shyly, "Zola, will you tell us a story before bed?" "Of course, my dear." "What kind?" "One about a mama who goes to the stars but still loves her boys," Jelani whispered. Zola smiled through tears. "I know just the one." At 8 p.m., the family gathered around the living room screen, nerves buzzing as the news anchor's voice filled the room. Tonight inside the home of billionaire Ezra Bakari and the 3 sons said to be uncontrollable. 17 nannies in 6 months. Is the Bakari family a disaster in disguise? Footage rolled showing blurred images of the boys with labels like problem children and emotionally unstable splashed below. "Baba," Omari whispered, voice trembling. "Why are they saying those things?" The first former nanny appeared. "Those kids are unmanageable. They wrecked furniture, screamed constantly, and acted like little tyrants. I feared for my sanity." Malachi's lip quivered. "Are we really that bad?" Before Ezra could speak, Zola stepped in. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" The boys shook their heads. "I see 3 strong, brave warriors who miss their mama so much they'd take on the whole world to guard her memory. I see kids with big hearts who want to know if it's safe to let love in again." The next nanny's words stung even more. "Their father's never around. No structure, no hope. They need therapy, not another nanny." Ezra clenched his jaw, but Zola remained steady. "That woman doesn't know what she's talking about," Bobby said, frowning. "Baba loves us." "He does," Zola nodded. "So much that he's been trying to carry all this pain alone. And that's no easy thing when your heart's been shattered." Then the final nanny came on, her tone icy. Those kids are broken, beyond repair. No kindness will ever be enough. Malachi burst into tears. She thinks we'll never be normal. Zola dropped to the floor and pulled all 3 boys close. No, sweet ones, you are not broken. You are grieving. And that's not something to fix, it's something to honor. Missing someone you love doesn't make you wrong. It makes you real. She looked at each one, her eyes firm. That lady never met me. And she sure never met 3 boys as smart, gentle, and strong as you. The next morning, Ezra's phone buzzed nonstop. The news clip had gone viral, splitting public opinion between sympathy and scorn. Clients called, schools called. But worst of all, Child Protective Services called. Mr. Bakari, we've received complaints. We need to schedule a home visit to evaluate your son's safety. Ezra's chest tightened. If they judged his boys by that footage, they could take them away. When he walked into the kitchen, he found the boys giggling in aprons, flipping pancakes with Zola like it was the most ordinary morning in the world. Something wrong? She asked gently. CPS is coming. The laughter stopped. Ah. They going to take us? Whispered Jelani. Ezra knelt, gathering them into his arms. No one is taking you, ever. But inside, he was terrified. May I offer an idea? Zola said. Invite the caseworker for the whole day. Let them see who these boys really are. 3 days later, a stone-faced woman named Ms. Rodriguez arrived, clipboard in hand, clearly expecting chaos. Instead, she found Jelani politely offering her tea, Omari explaining their morning chores, and Malachi measuring flour for cookies for Baba's builders, he said proudly. Zola says when people work hard, they deserve something sweet. Ms. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. These are the same boys from the news? Would you like to hear their side? Zola asked. For the next hour, she guided them through their story, how grief made them act wild, how losing their mama felt like losing the sky. We weren't being bad, Malachi said earnestly. We were just scared. But Zola taught us how to remember mama without getting angry. Ms. Rodriguez stayed the entire day, watching Ezra help cut Jelani's food, listening to Omari read a school poem aloud, seeing Malachi fold napkins, while Zola whispered gently to him about dreams. As night fell, she turned to Ezra. I've done this 20 years. Your boys aren't damaged, they're healing. Keep doing whatever you're doing. 6 months later, the Bakari home was filled with laughter. The boys had friends, their teachers praised them, and bedtime stories were joyful instead of tearful. Ezra had learned to be present. He no longer drowned in work. And Zola had become the heartbeat of the family. One evening, after the boys had drifted off to sleep, Ezra joined her in the garden where Ayana once danced with her sons. Zola, he said, his voice low. When Ayana died, I thought we were broken forever. But you didn't just save my boys, you saved me. He dropped to one knee, opening a small box. Zola and Becky, I love you. My sons love you. Will you be ours forever? Her hands flew to her mouth as tears spilled over. Yes, yes, yes. Their wedding took place right there, under the same acacia tree. The boys, now radiant in matching suits, served as ring-bearers and joy-makers. They had written their own vows. Zola, Malachi read, we promise to be good. We promise to remember Mama loves us, and you do too. And we'll help Baba remember to eat lunch. The garden filled with laughter and tears. 2 years later, baby Aisha was born, and the boys took their big brother duties seriously. She's so tiny, Jelani whispered. We have to teach her everything. Like Zola taught us, Omari said proudly. 5 years after Zola stepped into that stormy mansion, the Bakari family was unrecognizable. The triplets, now 11, were honor students known for their compassion. Ezra launched a foundation supporting single parents. Zola had become a sought-after speaker and wrote a best-selling book on grief and healing in children. And little Asha grew up wrapped in love. Every year on Ayana's death anniversary, they visited her resting place, not to mourn, but to celebrate. "Mama," the boys would say, "we want you to meet Zola and Asha. We think you'd really like them." And Baba smiles again now, so you don't have to worry. The same media that once called them demon children now hailed them as a symbol of resilience. But Zola and Ezra didn't care what the world thought. They knew what mattered. One night, as Zola tucked the boys in, Malachi looked up with sleepy eyes. "Zola, I'm glad you didn't give up on us." She kissed his forehead. "Never. You boys showed me what love really means." "What's that?" "Staying, no matter how hard it gets." And that's exactly what she did. Because sometimes the most difficult children are the ones who need love the loudest. And sometimes the people least expected to save the day are the ones who hold the missing piece. 5 years later, the Bakari household had become a place of music, laughter, and quiet strength, nothing like the broken shell it had once been. Malachi, Omari, and Jelani were now 11 years old, tall and bright-eyed, with the kind of calm wisdom that only comes from living through storms and learning how to dance in the rain. They were honor students at Umoya Academy, known not just for their grades, but for how they cared for others. If a younger student dropped their books, one of the Bakari boys would be the first to help. If someone cried in the corner, they sat beside them in silence until the tears dried. "You boys always carry so much grace," a teacher once said. Malachi had smiled and replied, "It's because Zola taught us how to carry broken things gently." Ezra, once buried in meetings and deadlines, now left his phone at the door when he came home. He coached soccer, helped with science projects, and read bedtime stories with silly voices. He had restructured his company to focus on family balance and launched a nonprofit called the Ayan Foundation, named after the wife he still loved and honored, which supported widowed parents and grieving children across the country. Zola, too, had grown. She had started a consulting practice for families in crisis, offering guidance, training, and a heart that had walked the hard road herself. Her book, Roots After the Fire, had spent 16 weeks on the bestseller list and was translated into 5 languages. But her proudest title wasn't author or expert. It was Mama Zola, the one whispered with sleepy warmth by 4 beloved voices each night. Asha, now 3, was a whirlwind of curls, giggles, and unstoppable questions. Her brothers adored her. Omari taught her how to tie her shoes, Jelani made her laugh with animal impressions, and Malachi told her bedtime stories, just like Zola used to tell them. One warm spring day, as the family prepared a picnic in the same backyard, where so much healing had begun, Asha toddled over with her favorite picture book and climbed into Zola's lap. "Tell me again how you found us," she said, tiny fingers curled around Zola's thumb. Zola smiled and kissed her hair. "I didn't find you, baby. You found me, all of you." That night, after dinner and dancing barefoot on the grass, under paper lanterns, the family sat together looking at old photo albums. "Do you remember this?" Zelani said, pointing to a blurry shot of the boys at age 6, covered in syrup and feathers on Zola's first day. They all burst into laughter. "I thought we were going to scare you off," Omari said. "I thought you'd run like the others." "I almost did," Zola teased. "You did throw a drum at me." "Worth it," Malachi grinned. "You stayed." "I stayed," she echoed, holding Ezra's hand. That night, they sat by Ayana's memorial tree, a tall acacia that bloomed with golden flowers every spring. Asha placed a tiny flower crown on the base. "Hi, Mama Ayana," she whispered. "Thank you for letting Zola be our mommy now." They all bowed their heads in quiet honor. This ritual, once full of tears, had become one of joy, a yearly reminder that love doesn't vanish, it just changes form. And as the stars came out above them, Zola wrapped her arms around all 4 children. "You are my roots," she whispered. "You are my reason." Ezra kissed her temple. "You saved us all, Zola." But Zola shook her head. "We saved each other." And from that night on, no storm ever shook the Bakari family the way the first one had. Because they had learned the most powerful truth of all. Families aren't built from blood or perfection. They're built from love, from presence, and from the decision to stay again and again, forever.